I'm Lisa Norton.
And I'm Lora Zmak. And together, we're Material Girlfriends.
And we have a fun project for you today.
We have lovely Weather for Ducks, which is a 20-inch pillow with a 12.5-inch block right in the center of it.
And to make it even better, the pattern is a free download.
Yay! Now we have patterns and kits on our website, but just go to www.materialgirlfriends.com, subscribe to the page, and in your welcome email, you will find the link for the free download. So go ahead and gather the fabrics that you need or order your kit, press out any of the wrinkles, and we'll join you at the cutting table.
All right, let's get started. So I've taken my kit apart and I pulled out my pretty fabrics, or you can go ahead and gather your fabrics, print out your pattern. Now I'm ready to start on page 1. So be sure you read all the instructions before starting. I know it says it right there in red, but definitely read the instructions. It really helps from making any mistakes. I'm going to, out of my fabric, cut 2 6.25 inch squares, 2 more, and then I'm going to cut my background fabric, and then I'm cutting up the brown. So once you've cut out those pieces, your next step is to start pairing them up. So I know that these two are going to be sewn together. I'm going to pair this up, and reading my instructions, I'm going to draw a white line along from corner to corner, and I'm going to do that with both of these. Let me set this guy out of the way for a second. So both sets have my crisscross on there. Lisa's going to take it to the sewing machine and sew.
Thank you very much.
Wow, you are so fast.
Hey,
look at that. Here's one already sewn up. My next step is now I'm going to cut this apart. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it.
It would be a 3 1/8.
3 1/8, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a 3 1/8. I'm going to cut on the next 3 1/8. Yep, lined up right there with the center. And now I'm going to cut down those diagonal lines. And then Lisa will open those up.
I'm going to press them towards the dark.
Here's the next one. Be sure you have your glasses on so you can see everything lined up the way they're supposed to. A nice sharp blade so you're not working with Skippy the Wonder Blade. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and press these toward the dark.
Here's 2 that are pressed. Next step is to trim them down to 2.5 inches.
So what I like to do is I like to use my block. And I will, the nice thing about the block is it has a groove in there and it catches onto the seam. And so I will just run it along and see if I need to trim it. And I will be trimming these to 2.5 inches. So I'm going to have a little bit to trim off of this, which is nice. That way I know that they're going to be perfectly square. And then I'll go ahead and spin this around and line that up perfectly. Now, if you don't own a block lock, I would say definitely put it on your Christmas list. They're a wonderful thing to have. You can go ahead and use any of your square rulers that have a diagonal line in them. And you'll just line up your diagonal. Be sure that diagonal is lined up just perfectly. And then I'm going to trim a little bit off of both sides. And turn that around. Go to my 2.5 inch mark. Do the last bit of trimming. There we go. And those 2 are done. So I'm going to do that with the last of my pieces until I have all 12 of them done. Now I'm going to have 16, so I'm going to have some leftovers. But this way we'll be able to get those 12 done, and then we're going to sew them together as in step 6 in order to make our pinwheels.
Time flies while you're making pinwheels. So I've made my little pinwheels. I've trimmed them down to the 2.5 inch square. Now I'm going to sew them back together. So I'm going to sew the left to the right in order to make this unit. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom, which makes this unit. Then I'm going to sew these units together
which of course makes our last final unit. So I'm going to take 3 of my pinwheel units. I'm going to sew them together, and then I will press in one direction. Then I'll take this whole unit and I'm going to sew it to the top of my lake water. Now, be careful when you're cutting out your lake water that your puddles are all going in the direction that you want to. It'll look nicer this way than if your fabric was running the other direction. Then I've taken my ground and I've sewn my ground to the bottom of that unit. So now I'll have my entire background ready for my applique. Now we're back, we're ready to do our applique. So our background is all prepared. We've got our
Pinwheels.
thank you, pinning wheels,
Spinning pinwheels.
spinning pinwheels. We got pinwheels sewn to our background piece, so our background is all ready for our applique. For the tools that we like to use for our applique, let me share a few of our favorite tools. These are the perfect scissors. They're called perfect scissors, but they really are perfect scissors. They've got a little serrated edge, and so they're very fabulous for working with applique. You're also going to want some tweezers for those small pieces to help position them where you want them. You're going to definitely want a fusible Teflon sheet. And then this product, we're loving it. It's called Heat and Bond Easy Print Light. And it is a fusible product that can go through your inkjet printer. Don't put it through a laser jet printer. A laser jet uses heat and you'll have a mucked up mess in your printer. So make sure
My husband was not impressed.
No, Laura's husband was a little torqued. So, but if you use it in inkjet, it works fabulous. So what I do is I take out one sheet, I put it in my tray, I put the textured side up because I want it printed on the paper. In your pattern on page 4 are your applique pieces that are already reversed. So you put that on the glass of your machine, you make sure that you are copying at 100% size, and out comes your pieces. So now we're ready to prepare our fusible pieces, and it just eliminates that tracing. It's a quick and fast method and very, very accurate. The other step you're going to need is you're going to take pages 5 and 6, you'll overlap them and then tape them together. This will be your placement sheet. Okay, we are back. We sloppy cut our pieces out. So a sloppy cut just means, you're not cutting on the line. You're leaving about 1/4 of an inch beyond that outside line. We also like to do a method that we call window painting. That's when you sloppy cut the outside and then you're going to sloppy cut the inside out. The reason we like to cut out these big pieces out of the inside is so that your applique remains nice and soft instead of stiff. So we sloppy cut out the big pieces, not the little ones. So we'll sloppy cut this green piece out of the duck body. So we still have this one to trim, Laura, if you want to trim those.
Trim away.
And then we just are going to organize our pieces to the wrong side of our batik. Now I get asked all the time, which is the wrong side of a batik? They look the same. Well, if they look the same, then there is no wrong side. But I usually check to see if one side looks slightly more faded than the other, then that would be your wrong side. So I think this, it's so close. It wouldn't matter if we made a mistake, but I think this might be the wrong side, and this one I sure can't tell. So what we're going to do is we're going to organize our pieces on the wrong side of our fabric, and so everything that is gold gets put on the gold fabric. And then we're going to heat set them. Now, according to the product that I'm using, it's just seconds, like a 1 million, 2 million, and we're done. But you're going to want to read the instructions per your product. It's usually, every product seems to be different. Now, another fun thing to do with your fabric is because batiks are so interesting, you can actually just fussy cut some very interesting designs onto your piece. So fussy cut is a term we use that you use the print on your fabric to enhance your applique pieces. Okay, Laura, you want to do this one?
Yeah, let me move our background. And I'm going to move our iron on.
So I move this over. Is the iron nice and hot?
Should be good and hot by now.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to fussy cut. I think that little stripe, and that would be kind of interesting for those.
Well, let's see. This is a bright little gold, so let's put that for the baby beak. This has some really nice swirls in it, so I'm swirling there.
And I like the dots for the last one.
Awesome.
Okay, so before you do that, there's this Teflon sheet, and the Teflon sheet is just going to protect your iron from getting mucked up. So a 1 1,000,000, 2 1,000,000, 3 1,000,000, 4 1,000,000, that's really all this takes. If you over heat set your product,
Give it a little check.
it won't like to fuse to the your background fabric.
Looks good.
Okay, we're fine. So that's all it took for this product. So be sure to read your product instructions. The next piece is this little itty bitty eyeball. It is so tiny. I don't know how we're going to stitch this, but we can. If you don't like itty bitty pieces, feel free to just do a few embroidery knots or a little satin stitch. You don't really have to deal with the tiny, tiny pieces if you don't want. Our choice was to use a piece of the scrap from the bottom ground portion, and we just like to find a dark location so it looks like it's almost black, and then we just will fuse that one right in place. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and arrange and fuse our pieces, and we'll be right back.
We're cutting out. I just wanted to point out my favorite scissors are a little different than Lisa's. I have arthritis, and so I really like using the spring-loaded Fisker ones. That way I'm only having to do half the work. So as I close, the spring then opens it up for me.
Now when you're trimming out your scissors, your scissor hand will remain steady. You're not trying to turn your scissor hand. What turns is your fabric. So your fabric will turn, but not your scissor hand. Also remember, small cuts, small scissors, big cuts, big scissors. So since all of this is nice and small cutting, you're going to use your small scissors.
And we're cutting on the outside of the black line.
Exactly. Also, my little tip, I have lost enough of the tiny pieces to just, pull my hair out. Don't trim these little itty bitty pieces out until you're ready to fuse them in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and set these aside, and we're going to cut out our bigger pieces, and we'll be right back. So now we have all of our pieces all trimmed out, and they're ready to fuse. So if we were going to fuse them to our background, you know what? We can't see, even if we had a light tablet, which we do. I'm not going to get it out at the moment, but you still can't see the design through it. So what are we going to do? So what you're going to use is a Teflon sheet. These Teflon sheets aren't very expensive at all. And boy, they will save you a lot of headache. So I don't know if you can see through with the camera, but I can clearly see my, my pieces. So all of these are numbered, and they're numbered for a reason. That they're numbered in order of how they should be laid out. So the first one is number 1, and that's this outside wing. Thank you. You're going to take a pin, and you're just going to drag it across the back so you can score it. And then this is an easy way to get your paper backing off. And you're going to lay that right in its first position. Your next piece is number 2, which is the duck body. So I'm going to take the paper off. Just make sure that the fusible stays in place. And we're going to put him in place. Number 3 is his noggin. Nope, that's what is number 3? Yeah, number 3 is his head. Now I actually could put this on a light tablet and I might see through a little bit easier. I do love my light tablets. I'm going to put him in place. Maybe we will get out the light tablet.
You want to give it a little fuse, because if we fuse it in place, then we can always move it a bit.
Except for I wanted to talk about this right here.
Okay.
So we're going to put a white head on top of a light gray body. If you press through and you can see the light gray through your white fabric, you have a couple options. you can put a fusible product, like a fusible interfacing, to the back side of your white fabric in order to make it less transparent. Translucent.
Yes.
Yes, but you don't, if it bothers you. Some people, it's like, it doesn't bother me. Another option is that you can, with a yellow or one of those water-soluble markers, just trace this line here on the outside edge, remove the head, and then give yourself at least 1/16 of an inch and trim that piece of gray out. And then there won't be a light gray shadow. You want to get our pillow? Let me show you. See, it didn't bother me, so but it does bother some folks. So I didn't pull mine out, and you can't really see it. I mean, I really have to push in to see it. And in fact, it even gives the head just a slight accent. But for those that it does bother, those are two options for you. It just depends on how transparent your white fabric is. So I like my white fabric. It is Marshmallow from Marcus Fabrics, and it's a nice quality. So we're going to go ahead and build our duck here and push his wing. Now the nice thing about the Teflon is that when you heat set it to the Teflon, it will still peel off, and then you can put the whole unit onto your background fabric. So should we just give this a little tap, or do you want me to put the nose on?
Well, let's give it a little tap
Nose, the bill.
and then you can see. I'm just gonna, just like that.
Okay, well,
There we go.
let me find her bill.
It's orange.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We might have to get a light tablet out after
Nah.
all. It's harder to see through the fabric, but I think I got it pretty good right there.
All right. Give it a little tap.
Mm-hmm. And we would continue building our duck and our reeds. When we're ready to put her on the background, see, we can lift her right off. I usually wait till she's cool. And then she'll position on your background, and you can refer to your paper. Position her similar to your template paper, and then you would heat set her in place. So we're going to go ahead and build our piece onto this, and we'll be right back. Baby duck's cooled enough.
Mm-hmm. And this is cooled enough too. There we go.
And Mama, don't lose your eyeball because I didn't fuse you. Let me see where her eye's supposed to go. Yeah, I got her in a really good spot.
Right on the line.
Okay, maybe I'll just tap it real quick before I lose the eyeball. Okay. Okay, now we're ready to put it on our background. Now, of course, I can't see through my background, so I'm just going to set the duck paper or my
For reference.
yes. So I'm going to
And once
set
you
her.
grab that ruler, and we can also use it to check, and double check.
Okay. There's the long ruler.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Just, I figured she was 3/4 inch from the bottom, so I wanted to be sure it's 3/4 inch so she can come down a little bit. Excellent. And 2 1/4 is what I've got that way. So 2 1/4 is where her wing will come around, and her wing comes up just a bit more. His little head. Okay, baby duck goes in there.
A little down more for baby duck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, looks good. Shall we fuse it?
Does that look about 1 inch? I don't want to get too close to my seam.
Let's see. It should be just a little over a 1/2 inch. Yeah,
Okay.
that looks good.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and fuse that one in place, then we'll put the greenery on top.
Alrighty. Just a tap with this product. And now we're gonna lay our greens on.
And the greens I know would come all the way to the bottom. Let's spread these guys out. I'm going to go ahead and trim out these itty bitty tiny, smaller than a Tic Tac pieces for on top of the cattails. Okay, and I like how all of these are falling. Shall I press these guys down?
If you like where they're at.
Alrighty, I like where they're at. And then we'll put the cattails on it.
Now to protect the iron, you could probably put down the Teflon sheet, but I think we're going fast.
Otherwise, we'll be shopping for a good iron cleaning product.
I have one actually.
There we go. And then we need the tip of those cattails.
Here's the.
That's definitely tweezer work. You go ahead and get those in there.
Here's one. Oh, it hardly even shows up on that
A
green.
little white tip on there, and the blue looks
It's
good.
almost not even a necessary piece, really.
Of course, it's a fabulous detail.
I do like details. But if it drives someone crazy, it's really not that big of a
I think I
detail.
actually held on. I have this guy upside down.
I need to get the tweezers because I can't position that. Make sure it's shiny side down.
Or you will be needing that iron cleaning product.
Oops. I got it in a good spot.
Mhm.
I'm going to get my head in the camera here. Ah. Use the cattail for me so I can. My cattail was making it bounce.
All right.
Okay, we're good.
All right, now let's make sure everything fused just great. Awesome. So now we're ready to go to the sewing machine. I am setting up my machine first. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to change to a skinnier needle than what I had before. I had a relatively thick needle in there, and I'm going to change to a real skinny one, and I like the size 70. The reason is that when you're stitching into the fusible product that is on the edge of your applique, the hole of the needle will not close like a normal fiber will because it has that fusible product in there. So I like using a small needle, and I like a open toe foot. Now I've already played with my favorite stitches. You're going to need to play with yours to see what you like, because everyone's going to be a little bit different. But you can either do a straight stitch, a zigzag, or a blanket stitch, or use some of those fancy stitches that come in your fancy machines. I've already done a practice stitch, so I made sure that my color was what I wanted, my tension was good, and now I'm actually ready to sew. So whenever you start, you want to do slightly over the edge and go slow. Take your time with this process. You'll like your results a lot better if you're just taking your time with this. And if you get to a point where you need to pivot, be sure you hit that needle down button, and then you're able to lift up that little foot and then pivot along.
Hello. Now we're ready to cut our frame for our cute little Lovely Weather for Ducks block. So, how much yardage was this in the kit, Laura? Do you remember?
3/4 of a
It was
yard.
3/4 of a yard. Well, when you cut out any fabric for a kit, you should always cut out your largest pieces first. So for this 3/4 of a yard, this is the fold up here. This was the salvage down here. You're going to cut 15.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric, and then you'll trim it down to 20.5 inches. So I have my two pieces cut, and these are going to be used for the back side of the pillow. So we're going to go ahead and set these aside. Next, you'll cut a 4.5 inch strip, and then you'll trim off the fold, trim off the salvage, and have a 20.5 inch wide piece. So I've got these two.
And then the last cut is also 4.5 inches. And then I just trimmed off the fold, and I had then cut again at 12.5 inches. And then this was how much I had left over from that 3/4 of an inch. So be sure to cut your largest pieces first and then your strips. I'm going to set this aside, and we'll bring back our lovely weather for ducks. So your first step is you're going to sew your 12.5 inch by 4.5 inch strips to the top and bottom of your cute little duck applique. So we're going to sew those on, and then after we sew those on and we press the seam towards the outer border, we'll sew on our left and right sides of that. Okay, we're going to go sew it, and we'll be right back. Okay, our quilt top or pillow top is ready. We're going to pretend it's quilted. Just pretend with this. We didn't have time to quilt it, but pretend this one is quilted just for demonstration purposes. Now, we did a rolled hem stitch on this edge, so that means we rolled it under a quarter and then a quarter again, pressed it, and then just did a straight stitch down the end. Now, these are going to be right sides together, so that means that rolled portion is facing up and the smooth side is facing down. You're going to align it with your quilt or pillow top and check to see if your sides are a little long. Sometimes if you've done the quilted pillow, it shrinks it a little bit, and so you might need to trim off 1/4 of an inch or so to make sure it fits. So when it lines up, you're going to overlap the other one. Same thing. The not smooth side is up, smooth side is down. Your pillow quilt top is face up. And now you're going to stick a bunch of pins in it. So we'll pin, 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 pin to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. It really doesn't matter if it's one side up and one side down. That part doesn't matter. Oops, it got a little wrinkled. So this one we've already sewn. I actually took a little bit deeper than 1/4 of an inch just so that I knew it would stay. And so my pillow portion is all ready. Well, it's upside down. And then I like to trim off my corners so that my corners stay nice and pointy. So you just, and not to the stitch mark, just very close, just taking off that extra bulk. And then when you turn it right side out, your pillow form pillowcase is all ready. And then the size of the pillow that you need, of course, we got a feather down one, of course, for a duck. Of course, you have to have a feather pillow. It's 20 inches. And then you just fit your pillow in your pillowcase and you're done. There you are. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the next video.